timer. Score! Oh, it's over. It's over. They score!
That's game. Oh, my goodness.
They score. Roll the highlight reel. What a ripper. Top Jetta. Spread it on.
It's HNLive Today. I'm Sean Mullen along with Dave Dawson. A big show again for you this week as we're joined by the voice of the Whitecourt Wolverines on the road to the Centennial Cup, Dave, but more than just hockey to talk about with the potential favorites in the Alberta Junior Hockey League playoffs.
Yeah, Junior A has been a hot topic in Western Canada over the last few months, and the Whitecourt Wolverines top spot in the league, making news for different reasons that they would maybe hope right now. But we'll have Wyatt Zieger, the voice of the team, on the show to talk all about that and what hopefully could be a long playoff run, maybe even see them in May in Oakville, Ontario.
Of course, the Junior B finals are almost all set in Alberta, and Dave, a couple of upsets, I guess.
Massive, especially in the NEA JBHL, the Vermilion Tigers, top seed in the entire league, gone as well as the second highest scoring team in all of the 57 programs. The Sherwood Park Knights have been eliminated. We'll dive into that today.
We were at a hockey game on Friday, and a few wrestling matches broke out. Dungeon Wrestling promoting Unfinished Business 2 coming up March 29th. We'll have some interviews and comments and some heated words coming from that later on in the show. But first, our junior hockey report, and it's all brought to you by Adrenaline Source for Sports, Calgary's premier store for hockey, lacrosse, and team apparel, recently renovated and bigger and better than ever, a one-stop shop for all your sporting good needs. Visit us online at adrenalinegroup.ca. We fit your game. Now, starting our junior hockey report in the Western Hockey League, and Dave, things are really tight in a couple of spots in the Western Hockey League standings as we get closer to playoff time. In particular, in the Central Division, where you're very familiar as the voice of the Edmonton Oil Kings, there's quite a bunch of teams that are, the three top teams battling for top spot in that division. At one point, Medicine Hat was way out in front. Now, the Tigers are only 1 point ahead of the Broncos and 3 points ahead of the Red Deer Rebels, playing good hockey again with Dave Struch at the helm. Things getting really interesting down the stretch to see who'll end up with the 2 seed there.
Yeah, and the Eastern Conference completely has just been crazy. The Prince Albert Raiders and Oil Kings went into overtime on Friday night, and the Raiders holding on to that final playoff spot. The Lethbridge Hurricanes have been on fire over the last couple of weeks. Red Deer was faltering a little bit, but now with the brand new head coach, Dave Struch, they're rolling again. The Saskatoon Blades had lost 4 of their last 5 games. Now they've kind of turned things around, and it's absolute chaos. The Calgary Hitmen faltering at the wrong time as well, 5 points back of that playoff spot, and I'll be able to see them on Friday night. So some of the conversations, had a chat with Les Lazarek, the longtime voice of the Saskatoon Blades, on Saturday night. He was mentioning that, this is kind of the desperation time, right? Teams coming into Saskatoon, they have the target on their back. Everybody wants to beat the Blades, so they play their best hockey there. And Medicine Hat kind of giving up some real estate now. Swift Current rolling again too. So I don't think anything's solidified in the Eastern Conference. No. In the West, those top 3 spots are kind of where the talk is, but overall it's chaos.
Yeah, well, you look at the West, it's been a battle all season long between Prince George, Portland, and Everett for who's going to end up with the 1 seed there. And I kept thinking Everett would drop off, but they've stayed right there in that battle with Prince George and Portland. I think that's going to be real exciting down the stretch. As for that Central Division crown, I wonder, with how well Lethbridge and Prince Albert has been playing down the stretch, do you even necessarily want to finish in second and have to play them, right? Is it going to be as much of an advantage as you might have thought it was a month ago?
Then that's a great question. I think that some of the conversation was after the Oil Kings took the Blades to overtime, where it was very much a battle. Edmonton was without their top faceoff guy. He was a late omission from the lineup. It was 1-0. Florida Panthers draft pick Grayson Sauchin ties it up late. And if not for a penalty shot in overtime, the game was over. So, what I'm hearing a lot is that number 1, 2 seed, those desperate PA Lethbridge teams. Lethbridge is one of the hottest teams in the league right now. I wouldn't want to play the Lethbridge Hurricanes in the first round. Saskatoon loaded top to bottom with talent. I mean, I don't think there's any spot solidified in the East when it comes to a playoff run that these guys are guaranteed to move forward. It's going to make for some fun hockey to watch.
Now, you mentioned that game between Saskatoon and Edmonton, and I know there was a moment in that game that caught your ire a little bit, maybe, Dave.
Yeah, and it's an interesting one of those things that, as the game of hockey evolves, Molly, there's, a lot of rules, as you and I know, in the same generation and age, and growing up watching hockey, you think, well, this rule, eventually that'll evolve. If you go back to watching some of those Wayne Gretzky highlights in the 80s of breakaways with 4 sticks in his midsection, and he's still getting a shot away and there's no penalty called. Eventually you look at that, okay, well, this is now a hawk, right? That was a necessary change. Puck goes out of play. If it's coming off at a defenseman's stick, he clears it out. Okay, that's a delay game penalty. That's an evolution of hockey. There was a late in the second.
I hate that penalty, by the way. It's my least favorite. Like, if you want me
as
to
an
rant,
Oilers fan,
I can talk about that.
You absolutely hate it. So
And it's not even just that. I when I was broadcasting in the Western League, I would say every time, my least favorite penalty in sport. I don't care who gets it. Anyway, I'll get off that rant for another day.
It's a tough one. Maybe next week's show. Get on that rant. And this is, this is one of those plays that it wasn't on the forefront of my mind until it happened. And I thought, okay, I wonder if this is something that needs to be revisited in hockey going forward. So Rowan Woodward, he was chasing down a loose puck late in the second period. It's still scoreless, right? Key moment of the game. Oil Kings have killed off a couple penalties already. So he's got his head down, chasing after a puck into the offensive zone. And the goaltender, Gardner, for the Blades, comes out to play the puck. He's about 10 feet out of the crease. And Woodward's got his head down the whole time. He's looking at the puck. He's not necessarily, has his eyes on what's going to be coming forward. And at the last second, he sort of lets up. But Gardner initiates the contact from my vantage point, from what I saw initially. And then Woodward ends up going to the penalty box, right, because of a goalie interference penalty. It wasn't necessarily Hasek Gaborik, so to speak, but I wonder what your thoughts are on goalie interference if it's initiated by a goalie, right? Like, would you still consider that goalie interference if the goalie was the one making the initiation of contact?
I believe that there is some leverage in there for a referee's discretion, that if the goalie were the one that initiated the contact, they would be the one to get the penalty, right? So I think it's important to protect goaltenders. You don't want them to be free reign. You don't want Milan Lucic running over Ryan Miller like we saw 15 years ago. But I think that's up to the officials. And maybe that's something that the league has to sort of speak with them directly. But I didn't see the play that you're speaking of. But, I believe the wording of the rule would allow for the officials to adjust their call based on who initiated the contact. And perhaps in this case, it's less of a rule issue and more of a official's discretion issue.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the discussion was with the officials. Rowan Woodward was given a 2-minute minor penalty, but it's one of those situations that, if there's that gray area, that officials are allowed to determine whether the goalie initiated it or not. Predominantly in my viewership, consummation of the game of hockey over the years, very rarely do you see a goalie get that penalty. It generally goes to the player, right? So, I'm just curious. It was a key moment of the game.
It's a little like, in football when you accidentally land on a quarterback, suddenly you're roughing the passer, right? They're going out of their way to protect this key position, and I understand that, but I think the actual letter of the rule doesn't necessarily call for how it's enforced sometimes. So maybe it's a conversation of enforcing it, right? Of saying, hey, we want to protect goalies, but we don't want to give them free reign to instigate that contact and then draw those penalties. And that's, maybe it was a well done play by the Saskatoon netminder in this case to get the referee to bite. But that's where I think it comes down to it. I don't know if the rule has to change, but I do think, if it becomes an epidemic of goaltenders kind of putting themselves in harm's way intentionally to draw those penalties, maybe you have to revisit how you enforce those rules.
Yeah, it's not as if you see that week after week after week in hockey. You're right? So, it just made me curious as to, because we may see that in the NHL playoffs, the Western Hockey League playoffs, and some league playoffs, that a goalie says, well, I know I have this gray area. I'm going to take advantage. It's 2-2 in overtime. I'm going to come out, play a puck, hit a guy. We get the power play.
Yeah, and that's something they're going to have to be real careful of. And hopefully the best referees that are out there are going to be on top of it. But, even the best ones can see a goaltender go down and just immediately react, right? So that's something that they're going to have to watch carefully for sure. Transitioning now to the Canadian Junior Hockey League and the Junior A scene across Canada, Dave. And those rankings at the top continue to be fairly consistent with the same teams that are in the mix. They're bouncing back and forth a little bit. Still the Collingwood Blues at the top spot.
Yeah, there hasn't really been anyone who has made a drastic move at all in the top 20 rankings. There's, some of the honorable mentions that make a difference, but there really hasn't been a lot of movement. There's been one spot, two spots, but there's a team out east that's hosting, and often you think the host team, okay, well, how good are they really going to be? But it looks like the hosts are they're not taking for granted the spot of hosting the Centennial Cup in May, the month of May.
Yeah, they went on a big winning streak. That's Oakville. They went on a big winning streak at the end of the season, now up 2-0 in their first round series with Buffalo. So you want to see that. If the team's a host, you want them to be competitive with the rest of the squads. When we get to go to Centennial Cup and broadcast that as the streaming provider for Hockey Canada in May, you want the host to be competitive with the rest. And certainly Oakville is showing that they're not going to back into that role. And we'll see how things continue to evolve across the country in all sorts of great races in Junior A, including in the Alberta Junior Hockey League, where things are absolutely wide open this year. Some new faces at the top of the league, some changes in the league, and I think as wide open a playoff as it's been in Alberta in a long time.
Yeah, Whitecourt, Calgary, Drumheller, Bonnyville, all those teams right up there pushing. They have their play-in series going on right now. And Fort McMurray, as we know, the only thing that's been solidified is eliminated. They didn't have the greatest playoff push there, and it's been a difficult season for the Oil Barons as well. So Canmore advancing to the playoffs through the play-in series, and things wide open. And who knows? Maybe the Whitecourt Wolverines, it could be their year to win the league championship and go further than that. And we are now joined by the voice of the Whitecourt Wolverines. It is a man of many puns. He is Wyatt Zieger, and happy to have him part of the HNLive family. He had a couple of games on our airwaves a few weeks ago, and obviously Wyatt in the Whitecourt Wolverines chair. The town of Whitecourt is in the news lately when it comes to the rumors and things like that of relocation potentially. And Wyatt, we know you probably can't speak specifically to that whole situation overall, but kind of what's your sense as to what the community response is to what's been going on at the Wolverines?
Well, regardless of the noise kind of outside and what's been happening here, the Wolverines are still in Whitecourt, and it is still your Whitecourt Wolverines. And I think we haven't had a lot of home games to really show the response of what has happened since the news story has kind of transpired here. But for now, it's a team that's chasing their first AJHL title. And, from what I've seen from fans and myself doing the sponsorship for the Wolverines and going around and talking to people is that, it's they want to keep the team in Whitecourt. And, I think a good step towards doing that is, the Wolverines' first home playoff games for this Friday and Saturday, and packing JDA Place with as many butts in the seats and really showing that this town does care about their Wolverines is probably the best step in the right direction to keeping them in Whitecourt.
Well, it's been such an unusual season, of course, with what happened with the AJHL in the middle and some of the teams who departed the league. And the Wolverines find themselves heading into the playoffs in a wonderful position. A high-ranked team across the country in the CJHL rankings, finished first in regular season standings. So I'm sure there's a lot of excitement around that. And hopefully, whatever this buzz is about potential relocation isn't going to soften that excitement in the community too much about what could be a very strong and long playoff run.
Yeah, and you know what? It's been a long season here for the Wolverines fans, and you alluded to it. The team's leaving in the middle of the season, and Whitecourt was a fifth place team at that time. And I think, you kind of have to ignore what's happened outside of the league. You can't control the fact that the Brooks Bandits, the Okotoks Oilers, the Blackfalds Bulldogs, and so on are no longer in the AJHL. And I don't think that it cheapens a championship for any of us as well. I think, this is something that potentially could be better for the league, because in years past, I know when there was a North and South division, as a Wolverines fan, you're just kind of hoping you win the North and then you get Brooks. And now this year, there isn't that. There's some real parity in the league heading into an AJHL playoffs this year. And I think that's more exciting from a standpoint for the fans, because you're not just waiting for who's going to take on Brooks.
Yeah, and as somebody who has lived in Whitecourt years ago and was, left just before the Wolverines came to the town of Whitecourt in the Junior A ranks, Junior B prior to that, Wyatt, you probably remember.
So basically, they're like, oh, okay, Dave's gone. Now we can get a Junior A team here.
Yeah. Now, essentially. Now everything can come together now that Dave's out of the way. So, But yep, Whitecourt did make a run to the finals prior to that, right? And then, as you know, the town of Whitecourt, very dominant in hockey overall. Snowmobiling and hockey are essentially the two things. And in the summer, it's jet boating, right? So maybe just describe the town of Whitecourt and the excitement around potentially what can be a championship year for them.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the snowmobiling, because there's a lot of people up here in Whitecourt pretty disappointed about the lack of winter that we have had here this year, anyways. But you know what? I remember doing games for this team prior to COVID and just kind of filling in for Andrew Peard when he was still the voice of the Wolverines. And you were like a can of sardines in that building. You'd see on a regular Wednesday night an 800 to 900 fans in the stands. And I think COVID has kind of dampened that all around. And I know that COVID is no longer the big hot button issue that it used to be. But I do think that people found an excuse to stay at home and stay on the couch and maybe watch the Oilers instead, right? Because, as much as we all love hockey here in Canada, you are kind of separated into your quadrants of which NHL team is your closest in proximity. And I know from a Wolverines standpoint, if the Oilers are playing at 7 o'clock on the Friday night and so are the Wolverines, you do lose 100 fans right off the top that would rather stay at home and watch the Oilers or go support another one of the local businesses here in town. But I think a championship would mean the world to this town, right? It's never happened before here in Whitecourt. Like, we just captured our first ever regular season league title. And I think just building upon that would be just so huge for the Wolverines, and not just this season, but really the future of Whitecourt as well. Because I'm sure, as you guys know and you've seen, the Brooks Bandits kept on winning, and they kept on getting some of the best recruited players from across the country. So I think having a championship beside the name of the Whitecourt Wolverines is definitely going to help the future of the team as well.
Well, you mentioned parity. I mean, with the teams that are remaining in the Alberta Junior Hockey League, for the excitement of this, playoff season and a chance to go and try and challenge for the Centennial Cup, Whitecourt's in first place in the standings, but the next 4 teams were separated by only 6 points. So it really does feel like, for the first time in quite a while, like the Alberta Junior Hockey League playoff is anybody's game. And I think from a league-wide perspective, it's much easier to generate excitement based on that, isn't it? And how do you sort of handicap the playoffs as we get closer and closer, the play-in going on, closer and closer to those first-round series getting underway?
Well, it's been exciting to watch the play-in games. I think some a little closer than what some people thought. The Fort McMurray in the Canmore series, maybe not so much. But Olds getting a win against Grand Prairie was pretty huge. They went to overtime just the other night as well. So that's a series that could be 2-1 the other way. And then you look at the Camrose and the Drayton Valley series going on right now, and you've seen Camrose blow a 4-0 lead, and Drayton Valley come back to win 5-4 in overtime, and then Canmore gets the next 2 games of the series, a good response for them. And right now for Wolverines fans, you're kind of stuck in limbo. Who will we play? Will it be Olds? Will it be Canmore or Camrose, or will it be Drayton Valley? So there's all those question marks left there, but either way, pretty good playoff matchups in the first round. But yeah, you know what? Parity is important to have in hockey, right? You look at the NHL playoffs, for example, and it's, you get your 4 or 5 teams that you think you're going to win, but you never know when the Boston Bruins are going to get bounced in the first round by an unlikely squad, or the Tampa Bay Lightning getting throttled by Columbus Blue Jackets. Things happen all the time, and I think that's kind of what you're going to look for here in this year's playoffs as well. And you kind of mentioned that race between the 2 to 5 and the 6 points separating them. We went into Bonnyville on a Friday night with them in second place. We ended up taking them down, and then Saturday night faced Lloyd, who ended up vaulting themselves into second place, and Bonnyville slid down to 4. So it is a really tight race there between 2 and 6, and I'm going to be really excited to see how the first round series kind of go through here for the AJHL playoffs.
Yeah, this being recorded on Monday afternoon. The unfortunate thing is Monday night, there's a pair of games. There's also games on Tuesday as well. So it's hard to kind of put you on the spot there. But yeah, Wyatt, is someone who's been the voice of this team for a couple of years, and I've enjoyed a lot of your puns on the air, from the fee, fi, fo, fum to the old McDonald and things like that. Who's a guy that's really been sticking out for you this year, and as a guy you think can really get hot in the playoffs?
Well, I think the obvious answer and the easy answer for the Wolverines is Travis Verbeek, acquired for Evan Smutney in the offseason, a guy who had 6 goals last year, and 4 of those came in 1 game. So wasn't really a prolific goal scorer heading into this season. Well, he's got himself over 20 more goals than he had scored in last year, and he really became a driving force here on the Wolverines. And you kind of seen Travis slotted in with some different line mates, but Joey Mello has been his center for the duration of the season here, at least since early October anyways. And those two paired together are just chef's kiss to watch out there. Not only 5-on-5, but they're the two best penalty killers on the Wolverines as well. The two of them combined for 7 shorthanded points and 5 of those goals. So those are two guys you're really going to want to watch out for Whitecourt. And Nick Avakian, a guy that was brought in from the Portland Winterhawks at the end of the season. They decided to go with a younger goaltender down their stretch. So we were fortunate enough to pick up Nick at the same time that Ben was dealing with some health issues as well. And Nick has had some shaky starts, but he's also had some really, really good quality starts. I think about the game in which the Wolverines locked up first place here in the AJHL, and Whitecourt surrenders 3 goals on the first 6 shots. Nick comes in relief, and he's perfect for the rest of the game, and the Wolverines are able to pick up the victory. So having a guy like that going truly means a lot to the Wolverines and a successful playoff run. But there's so many guys peppered in this lineup, like the Colby Browns and the Dylan Leslies and the Jack Franklins, who are just mean more than what they do just on the ice to the Wolverines, and being a good locker room presence as well. So it's not just one guy that's going to get it done for Whitecourt. It's going to be by committee. What
is the status in net? Now, you mentioned Avakian coming in from Portland and Charette having some health issues. Is he going to be available come playoff time? And, obviously one of the top goaltenders in the country, so that would make a big difference.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, my degree from Nate isn't a PhD, so I can't really comment on to when Ben might be able to return. But he's a guy that's up for the top goaltender here in the AJHL. You mentioned probably one of the best goaltenders in the CJHL this year. He's the only goalie in the AJHL also nominated for MVP. So if he doesn't win goaltender of the year, I'm going to be scratching my head quite a bit. But Ben is obviously a piece that we would love to have back into the fold here. Whether or not that happens, I'm not too sure.
It'll be also interesting to see if Whitecourt does end up playing Camrose in the next round, that there's a goalie right there that was a standout goalie of the year for the Wolverines, and it might end up being a head-to-head matchup in Carson Ironside. How funny would that be?
Oh my God. And you know what? On top of all of it, Carson, I've met a lot of kids here doing junior A, and I know he plays for another team now, but by far one of the nicest kids I think I have ever met. And he totally breaks the stigma of goaltenders being weird. He was always the first guy to volunteer for anything that we needed as a team, whether it was in the community or something off ice, to go watch a kid's practice. So, I wish the best of luck to Carson. I hope we don't play him for that reason, because he is such a good kid. But it's kind of been a goaltender swap there in the Camrose net. He was in there for that game 1 collapse, ended up surrendering 5-on-9 to end the contest against Drayton Valley. And it's been Elliot Pratt's net there since. So it'll be interesting to see if they go back to Carson at some point here, or if they're just going to ride the hot hand. But that's the benefit of having 2 goalies who can go there in Camrose.
How tempted are you to use the Elliot? Because I know that you have your puns, the ET there, and those kinds of things. But you're a guy that comes up with some of the craziest things on the spot. And I don't know if you have a directory of those just kept on your computer at all, but some of your goal calls over the years are ridiculous.
Colby Brown and the Wolverines have numbers coming in their way. Colby Brown waiting for the help in the form of Matthew Braun. Backdoor shoots, and he scores! Overtime winner, Matthew Braun! The anchor man, Matthew Ron Burgundy.
My dad likes to say I'm a bank of useless information, and my mind's a bit of a roller coaster. So, I was thinking of maybe some Elliot Moose ones. We got to find something to relate there. I know they're the Kodiaks. So it's a little prey versus predator there, but there's definitely going to be something in store if it is Camrose, because still no guarantees that we're not seeing the Drayton Valley Thunder or the Olds Grizzlies yet.
Okay, well, Wyatt, we know that your sense of humor is one of the things that we've enjoyed as consumers of hockey and those that have watched you on the AJHL. You've had a couple touches now on HNLive at the U17 Canadian Crown, and we're excited to have you coming up for the Champions Cup. And where is Wyatt? I think there's going to be a lot of excitement for that. So maybe those who are unfamiliar with who you are, I hear you've done a little bit of stand-up comedy in your life.
Yeah. A lot of it back in my Edmonton days. Unfortunately, the scene up at Whitecourt is pretty non-existent. So I think the last day I would have done stand-up comedy would be about March 14th of 2020, and then this weird thing happened where the world got thrown on a whole axis, and I wasn't really a Zoom comedy guy. I didn't find the humor in that. But yeah, that was something I did for a while there in Edmonton. So shout out to Ryan Short and some of the boys that I used to go out there and perform with, and I like to kind of credit that for the whole reason I really got into taking the radio and television program is I always thought I was somewhat of a funny guy. I just like the attention, like I think where most people start to do it. And I just figured when I started doing the play-by-play that this is something I could use, like some of my favorite guys growing up were Rick Jenneret and the Mayday. Like I liked the enjoyable calls, right? So even George Richards for the Florida Panthers radio network, he does all the goal calls with song lyrics and movie titles. And, that was something that I kind of wanted to encapsulate into my own, because I always thought if I'm not having fun, well, why would anybody else listening at home be having fun either? So, it's got me in trouble once or twice in my life, and not everyone appreciates the same jokes that everybody else does nowadays. But I like to think that I keep it on the safer side more often than not, and I'm pretty excited to change in the Wolverines polo for maybe a red and white Where's Waldo polo for Where's Wyatt down in Calgary.
Oh, that's awesome. We really look forward to working with you again, Wyatt, and hopefully a long playoff run for you and the Whitecourt Wolverines. Again, this year in the AJHL, it's wide open, and I think that's really exciting for fans all across the league, and we'll be watching closely. Thanks for your time.
Sean, Dave, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Great to chat with Wyatt, and certainly would be great for the community of Whitecourt for them to have a long playoff run. But as I said, it's as wide open in Alberta this year as it's been in years, and I think makes it for an extraordinarily interesting playoff in the Alberta Junior Hockey League. We'll see which of those teams represents them in the Centennial Cup coming up in May on hockeycanada.ca. Now, we're also very excited about the upcoming Alberta Junior B Provincials on HNLive.ca, Dave, and the finals across Alberta are getting underway, including one that we have for you, the Heritage Junior Hockey League final on HNLive.ca between the Sylvan Lake Wranglers and, of course, the Okotoks Bisons, the rematch of last year's Heritage Junior Hockey League final. That was solidified over the weekend with a 3-game sweep by Okotoks over the Rocky Rams and a 4-game series that was wrapped up by Sylvan Lake in Medicine Hat on Sunday. Medicine Hat Cubs staying alive on Saturday in a very dramatic 4-3 win, but just couldn't quite hold off the Wranglers on Sunday. So as good as the league was this year, as much excitement as there was throughout it, the top 2 teams are still the same as they were last year, Dave, and it should be another great battle between the elite of the Heritage Junior Hockey League.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody was overly surprised that many people thought Sylvan and Okotoks in the final, and with the crossover in the semifinals, a number of leagues do that. It gave the opportunity for a really entertaining semifinal between Medicine Hat and Sylvan. Geographically, probably made it a little more exciting as well for people who enjoy the highway. But yeah, it made an exciting semifinal. Rocky had their hands full with the Okotoks Bisons, who continually were dominant this season, and another Okotoks-Sylvan matchup. And Sylvan fared well last year in the Junior B Provincials, and Okotoks and the Bisons, obviously the Battle of the Bisons in the final didn't end up well for Okotoks. But the Wranglers and Bisons, I think, is the series everybody was wanting to see when it came from a viewership side of it. Everyone loves an upset. Maybe a surprise, a Rocky or a Medicine Hat would have been fun, but this will be a battle of 2 heavyweights. I'm looking forward to it with Chris Cole.
Well, and you can't get much more evenly matched, can you? I mean, Sylvan Lake, 33-3-2 on the season, 68 points. Okotoks, 34-3-1, 69 points. So they're about as closely matched as they possibly could be. They know each other well. They played in a championship last year. I think we're in for a whale of a series on HNLive.ca.
Absolutely. Cannot wait for that. Once the schedule does get confirmed, I know Chris Colwell's been licking his lips all year long to get that going, and we can't wait for that. And that is only one, I believe, or maybe even 2 of the 5 leagues this year that have a 1 versus 2 in the final. It's a big upsets across the province.
Well, and one we certainly were watching closely as we were watching the Sherwood Park Knights all season, the 2-time defending Capital Junior Hockey League champions who broadcasted their home games on HNLive.ca. But upset, a little bit of an upset in the semifinal in their league by Beaumont.
Yeah, Beaumont was the number 2 team in the Eastern Division, and they were neck and neck all year. Sherwood Park, the Sherwood Park Knights had won this season series, and the game number 1 in Sherwood Park, or whole series rather was absolutely phenomenal goaltending. And Beaumont knew going in from my chat with the coaching staff in the game that I did, they had talked about in game number 1, the plan is to play heavy defensive hockey against the second highest scoring team in all of Alberta Junior B. And they did that successfully. And they won in Beaumont on Sunday night. So 4 games. We have a brand new champion this year in the Capital Junior Hockey League. The 2-time defending champs are gone.
And not the only league, I guess, Dave, where there was an upset, as we can look all across Alberta and see how things are shaping up for the Alberta Junior B provincials.
And in the Northeastern Alberta Junior B Hockey League, the Vermilion Tigers, what an upset in the semifinals. They swept the top team, the St. Paul Canadians, and it's now the Wainwright Bisons and Vermilion in the Northeastern Alberta Junior B Hockey League finals. And Adam Huxley gets another shot at the dance, Sean Mullen, and it's a guy that year after year after year continually produces dominant Junior B hockey programs of the Wainwright Bisons.
Well, we can't wait to see how it shapes up for the Alberta Junior B provincials. That was one of the most fun events to be a part of last year, and I'm sure it's going to be again this year, and there's some tremendous talent throughout the league. And again, of course, we'll have the Heritage Junior Hockey League Championship Series, all games required on HNLive.ca. As intense as that was, we saw some real intensity at a Calgary Hitmen game, but of a different sort at the Scotiabank Saddledome when the folks from Dungeon Wrestling were in the house. They set up a ring just outside the entrance of the Zamboni area, and they had matches before the game and then during the intermissions. Everybody got fired up for it, teeing up Unfinished Business 2, which is set for March 29th at the Victoria Pavilion in Calgary. Attend in person if you can. If you can't, we have it for you on HNLive.ca, your streaming provider for Dungeon Wrestling. And Dave, it was a lot of fun for me to head over to the Scotiabank Saddledome on Friday, attend the matches, and chat with some of the wrestlers who are going to be there for Unfinished Business 2 on March 29th.
Yeah, it's definitely something special. Being a kid growing up in Calgary, coming to the Saddledome all the time, season tickets for the Flames, watching the Hitmen all the time. Had a chance out here with the Hitmen when I was a kid, so it's a great experience being out here. My two worlds marrying each other, wrestling and hockey in one. Can't beat it, and the crowd is electric. It's got to be done again.
That's why you worked in the glass there, right? It was a little flashback to your hockey days?
Absolutely. I mean, getting my face right up against the glass, it felt nice. It reminded me of my hockey playing days.
But to actually be here in the Saddledome where so much, especially Calgary wrestling history has taken place, so much Hart family history, this is 14-year-old me just freaking out right now. Like, I'm having the absolute best time of my life.
We just saw Tom Billington here, and I could have sworn we were transported back in time.
Well, and the amazing thing, too, is that as fans are just piling into the building for that one, you saw the entire building start to migrate over towards the ring. You know, they're here for a hockey game between the Calgary Hitmen and the Red Deer Rebels, but there's something about seeing wrestling, especially when you got great wrestlers like the two we had starting off tonight. It gets your attention. It's definitely something that people want to see.
I mean, just look at it. What an iconic venue. It's been truly an honour to finally compete in the Saddledome, especially long before me, my relatives, Uncle Dynamite Kid, and the British Bulldog, the tag team British Bulldogs in WWF. You know, I'm actually so fortunate to have the opportunity to just carry on my family's legacy and to actually forge my own legacy, and especially to have legendary professional wrestlers like Bret the Hitman Hart, who's Calgary's own. You know, he's a Canadian legend, and to have his guidance is something I couldn't trade anything for the world. To have such a privilege.
Once upon a time, I was just a kid sitting in the crowd watching Bret Hart, get inducted, and now I get to perform in front of all the Calgarians, and it was really surreal.
Tell me about being a part of Dungeon Wrestling and why it's special to be a part of this great Calgary tradition, but the next generation.
For sure. I think there's so much history here in Calgary, and something that Dungeon really assures is that you are getting the best quality wrestling right here in the heart of Calgary.
Well, there was a lot of heat in there, and I'm going to wake up feeling it tomorrow. But at the end of the day, it's more so you do what you got to do. We were put in a match, and she was willing to do what it takes to win. She was a little bit rude to the kids. I had to overlook that, but it's also International Women's Day, so we got to kind of, support one another. And
women's wrestling has come so far, hasn't it, to be a part of that?
Oh, yeah. I've heard so many tales regarding women's wrestling and how it's evolved. I've heard of people like going through those changes, and I'm glad to be in this era of professional wrestling. I think it's exceptional.
March 29th, Unfinished Business 2 at the Victoria Pavilion and on HNLive.ca. Tell me how excited you are about that card and why people should either get to the venue or order it on pay-per-view.
Well, I'll tell you right now, our main event stands on its own legs right now. You've got the masterpiece, Chris Masters, who again is our Stu Hart Heritage Heavyweight Champion. We talked about it before in past interviews, how this isn't the Chris Masters from the 2000s where he's just coming in being a body guy. He's here to wrestle, he's here to defend that championship. He's been defending it around the world. The record on that title and the lineage has been growing. But the guy he's taking on is no slouch himself. A recent TNA World Heavyweight Champion, Steve Macklin. This guy is coming for gold, and he's coming with a mission. And you know what? He might have Chris Masters in his sights.
Well, with Tom Billington, they're going to see just something completely different. They're going to be seeing someone who's just willing to risk their life and body and just everything like they've ever had and leave it all in the ring and leave no stone unturned.
And you have Mike Clark coming up. What does he have in store for him in that matchup?
Well, Mike Clark, you know, a very good professional wrestler, just talks too much. You got a bit of that ego going on with him, and all I've got to say is that Mike Clark is in for the fight of his life at the end of March.
You know, I'm not looking past Chris Knight, but my eye is on the Stu Hart Heritage Championship. That I want to make sure they get that title. You know, you got Chris Masters, Steve Macklin going at it. I just slapped the taste out of the mouth of Chris Knight, made him bleed his own blood, and I'll do it again on March 29th at the Pavilion. So you come check it out and watch me on that rise to the championship, because I want to represent this city better than anybody else ever has in the wrestling world, because I want to be the one that breaks that masterpiece. I want to be the one that bends that piece of steel. I want to be the one that takes that championship away and make the people of Calgary happy.
What?
Yeah?
Yeah, I had him. Then some dog or some crap jumped up on the ring, and yeah, it sucks, mate. And so, what do you think? Some dog grabs my chair when I'm about to win the match. It's not good. What do you think?
I can only imagine how you're feeling, but you only have a few weeks before you get your hands on wrestling again. So tell me about that matchup coming up. Unfinished Business, March 29th.
When's that?
March 29th.
On the 29th, downtown here at the Stampede Grounds, I'm going to take Raj Singh and I'm going to break his neck. That's what I'm going to do.
Well, thank you very much, and good luck on the 29th.
I don't need it, mate. Do I?
No.
That's right.
Right.
Where's the smokes?
I'll ask somebody. Anyone have smokes?
Well, it's nice to see that someone else is giving Mully a hard time and bullying him around, and not just me playing the heel with pushing producer Alex and Mully around. So Mully's got to be on his toes no matter where he is, but he handles it like a champ. He's always the face.
And I couldn't find him the smokes, so I might be on his hit list. And so if I end up there on March 29th for Unfinished Business 2 in Calgary at the Victoria Pavilion or on HNLive.ca, I'm going to be watching my back that Chris Knight doesn't find me.
Well,
he scares me, that guy.
If anything, we could get you a shtick HNLive supermodel, right? You could be like Ravishing Rick Rude. You could come out and
you don't want to see me in any gyrations like Ravishing Rick Rude. That would scare children away from ever being a part of. Women and children be running for the exits. No, but Raj Singh also, by the way, very nice to my daughter Audrey, who was in attendance as well. So Raj is the opponent for Chris Knight. So her and I will be rooting for him on March 29th. Time now for our top plays of the week, brought to you by Adrenaline Source for Sports, Calgary's premier store for hockey, lacrosse, and team apparel. Recently renovated and bigger and better than ever. A one-stop shop for all your sporting good needs. Visit us online at adrenalinegroup.ca. We fit your game. Dave?
Yeah, my play isn't necessarily a play. It's more just a shout out to the Sherwood Park Knights organization. They get eliminated by the Beaumont Chiefs in Beaumont. Tremendous organization. They are provincial champions of decades past, and they're going to push either Morinville or St. Albert when that series starts. But I just want to thank Rick Rashog and Tyler Steele and the whole organization. It was our first year taking on their season games this year in the 23-24 Capital League season. And I know that there's tremendous future of junior B hockey in Sherwood Park. There's an opportunity there with the appetite growing and the relationship building with minor hockey and the viewership and all those kinds of things. So congratulations, Rick Rashog and Tyler Steele. I know it's going to be a difficult pill to swallow, not having a chance to be 3-time defending champions again. But that is, we at HNLive, from all of our staff, want to say thank you very much for this year and congrats on a great season.
For me, it was a play in the game between Medicine Hat and Sylvan Lake on Saturday, where the Medicine Hat Cubs stayed alive for one more game against the Wranglers. But it was the leading scorer for the Wranglers, Justin Gary, at the end of the first period. With only 13 seconds left to play in the period, they started down 2-0. Gary's goal made it 3-2 for the Wranglers at that point. Just a beautiful goal coming through center ice, making a great move to the outside and a perfectly played shot, as Gary and company will be taking on the Okotoks Bisons in a rematch of last year's Heritage Junior Hockey League final, which should be an absolutely wonderful best-of-7 series we're so proud to broadcast on HNLive.ca. That'll do it for us this week. Thank you very much to Alex and to Dave. I'm Sean Mullen. You've been watching HNLive Today.